All right, we are live.
This is Senate Appropriations Room, and we're all here to do the Committee of Conference on the FY 2024 budget and a committee of conference. And we apologize for starting late, but we've had technical difficulties and did not have a Zoom feed that was functioning. So we have a short amount of time before we have to go on the floor. But I think people have been looking at where we have had differences and how we can perhaps move fairly quickly to close some additional sections of the budget. There are certain areas that are going to take more time because of language and how we want to construct that language. So I would say if you're here for housing this morning, we're not doing housing. Because that's one of our more complicated and it involves so many different funding and appropriations as we're looking at that whole area. So with that said, I'm going to probably refer to the documents that we have just been presented by our House conferees, and I'll have you go through what you are recommending here.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I think we can accommodate your 10 o'clock. Representative Scheid has been focused on and will present here this morning the workforce, where both the one-time dollars and some language, and we're going to let her walk us through that.
Okay, thank you, and I will be brief. We'll start with the spreadsheet, and there's some language pieces for it. Do you want me to introduce the language at the time where they show up in the spreadsheet, or do the language after we do the spreadsheet?
Why don't we do the language with the money?
With the money, okay, fine. So the first item up at the very top is restoring $100,000 to base to the Agency of Ag for the Farm to Plate for the Vermont Sustainable Jobs Fund. And then moving down to the next yellow item, this is the Department of Corrections, Supervisory and Management Professional Development.
I think we missed the. Where's the 100?
It's way at the top.
Oh, there we go.
We closed that.
Thank you.
Oh, that's at the top.
Yeah,
sorry.
very, very top, because it's in
Okay,
base.
yes.
The rest are one-times.
But
Sorry.
just to refresh our memory, that was one we did close out.
Okay. Thanks.
I
think, I'm not sure
I
whether
think it was a weekend discussion. Then.
Yeah.
It may have been a week, yeah. So we are now if we haven't before. And then the next is the Department of Corrections, who would ask for $500,000 for this culture change leadership development. We've reduced that to $200,000. That is the first page of your language. This is the language that was all part of the House bill. These two sections on the corrections workforce and the intent of the General Assembly.
Okay,
So.
on C, you have it, they shall testify before, you have a single committee reference there. I would assume that you recognize that there's more than the House committee that might be interested, so I would recommend that we replace that with General Assembly, and that way it's, it can be a variety of places. I would assume Justice Oversight might be a possible venue, as well as multiple policy committees.
We can change that. Great. Otherwise, the language is.
Yeah, we'll agree. We had further discussion, and you know that the federal grant didn't quite achieve the same purposes that this money was intended to achieve.
So this is just okaying the X 7.
Yes.
Yeah.
So we will close that out.
And the above, the 200,000.
And there's no language for the next one, right?
No, the next one is simply rounding up the dollar amount. It was we rounded it up by a few $1,000s to
So
2.3 million.
you were at 2.4, we were at 2.2, and we're rounding it up to 2.3.
Right.
Okay, let's close that out.
Yeah.
This is.
The next one was the Office of Engagement, and this, if you look at it.
It's got the 90,000.
Oh, I'm sorry, I did skip that. So that's the business coaching related to, and there's the second page of the language sheet that you got at the top. The amount of, this was the business coaching language is appropriated for a sub-grant to expand the business coaching program related to climate and supporting our businesses in that way. This original ask was for $180,000, and we cut it in half so they could do one cohort.
All right, we can close that out. We've been looking, we've been trying to obviously see how much money we have to work with, and that seems we can accommodate that.
And the next one, if we actually look at the two ones for 1.5 million, they're a few spaces apart, but it's the forgivable loan program and the Upskill Vermont Scholarship. What we ended up doing was taking the 3 million from the Vermont Upskill, cutting it in half, keeping half in the Upskill and half to the Office of Engagement, which is a little misleading. It's with UVM, Office of Engagement, and VSAC administer the program. It's available to all college students at all colleges in Vermont. In the first month they were open, they had 94 students apply. They're working at 75 different companies in 7 counties across the state of Vermont, all sizes, and businesses are actually often matching the amount of this loan. So it's starting off to be a really great program. So we wanted to continue to do that program. So
Okay.
that's those two pieces together.
Well, we've had conversations with people about how the programs work, so this is splitting the difference.
And there is language on the second page of your language. It says higher education, the amount of 1.5 million. So it's the same language that we've used before for the program.
And they said everybody gets 5,000,
Yes,
it's a flat.
it's a flat amount.
All right, was that in your budget, you just, language, so you're just
Yes.
reporting it to go back
Yes.
with, the money?
Yes.
So if we agree with the money, we need to put this language in.
Yes.
All right, let's close that.
Okay. Not highlighted, but we accepted it, was down a bit further, was the reach ahead for $1 million. That was a Senate position. I don't know if we already agreed to that or not, but we did agree to it. And then right below that, we've removed the $1 million for the relocating workers. And then,
And you moved it to adult basic ed.
yes, and you see that further down. There, so the bottom two items, the adult basic ed, Senator Westman and Representative Mahaly are working on final language for that, but we all, I believe, agreed to the money piece of it, so the language has come. And then on the one right above it, the small farm diversification, we already closed that out on the money, but apparently Senator Sears is looking at some other language working with House Ed.
Senator Starr.
Oh, the star, yep, sorry, Ag.
Yes, that makes more sense to me.
It's really confusing because the 150 stood by itself. What was being proposed was language that would go, if there was anything left from the 6.9 million organic farm. We had just simply said, if there's anything left, let it go to working lands. And so it was very hard to figure out what was being proposed here. Should the language,
That was one proposal that our House Ag, and I didn't think that that was the best choice because that 6.91 will probably pretty much evaporate on day one. 2, if there was any chance of anything left over, it was going to the Working Land Board, which would be the same board that would be doing this small farms diversification. So there's the potential if, and I don't think there is,
So-
it could potentially go there anyway, so we won't even need to consider that one.
all right,
But the House Ag Committee did ask within the bill H205, had a little more language than what was carried in the Senate budget, and asked to have, there was a section that mentioned the fact that for the amount of money that would be talking here, did not require a farmer to have match. And that was what
well, for 150, I know.
Senator, exactly, Senator Starr is considering.
But as long as he's fine, I'm fine.
Okay.
And we'll just leave the organic alone and have the default if there's anything to the working.
Land
Right.
board, it says in there.
Great.
Well, Well, as you know, remote workers has got mixed opinion in the Senate. We have very strong supporters on economic development. But on the other hand, we didn't include any funding for adult basic ed, thinking that we could, address that. And so,
I would just say on the adult basic ed piece, I can live with $1 million. I want the pressure on to get to some resolution of this.
that's the
And-
language, right?
And that will come in the language, but also I think, that even at $1 million, because they asked for in total $1.5 million, this is 3 years now that we've been increasing the amount of one-time toward them. And I would have gone to a lower number than the $1 million. And if we get to close out and we need to go someplace, I would take a couple $100,000 here, because I want the pressure to be on to do something and get to a solution and resolution of this problem. I would not take any more than a shave here, but we need to get to resolution.
I don't, and I think we all recognize that, but until that resolution and exactly how much of it is appropriate to be paid out of the ed fund versus are we serving a population that in fact we have to fund through general fund. We wanna make sure that we can make the necessary within the state's control.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I will say to that house, from the vantage point and part of the language that's come through, this is not to me about money.
No.
This is about students and people that are trying to move ahead in life for education and get to build a life. This is about the students and the people doing that, and it's not, the money is a side issue to this for me.
Well, I see money as always central, without it, they
It won't
can't
get
provide
there,
the students, so.
Right.
I would say that we're having to prioritize here in terms of workforce. And do we have a benefit to entice people here, or do we provide the resources to develop the skills necessary, particularly as we're learning about the population served to help them enter the labor market and stay there. And so in light of the fact we have nothing there, and the reality is gonna take a little time to figure out what we can do to restore that level of support that historically has been there from the ed fund. I think we will close that section out and say our top priority is that basic education system and keeping that strong.
And language is around that next piece of the, right, is coming, right? Okay.
All right, now,
There's one more piece of language.
yes, this is on the DA
SSA workforce, and the 3 million, the intent here is to put a fence around the money so that there is time to develop a plan to address the workforce needs of the DAs and the SSAs. And the funds wouldn't be released till the plan is approved by the Joint Fiscal Committee. If assuming we're not in session when the plan is figured out. There's the coming to agreement part has been taking longer than I think we thought. And then part of this is we really want to maximize federal funding. If we do this right, it could become $7 million. And I think it would be a real shame to leave money on the table. So I
we don't
think that
like doing that.
right. Right. So
Um,
this is the language to address that issue.
Yeah, the other thing I just wanted to bring up is that while it says appropriate to the Department of Mental Health, it's my understanding that this is intended for workforce, not only the mental health workforce, but the all employees of the agencies. So not sure if that should say agency human services or mental health and,
Well, it says designated and specialized service agencies.
right, but it's just the appropriations going only to mental health and it's not intended only for mental health staff.
So
So maybe it should live in the central office.
I was gonna say maybe.
Yeah, so we could do that. We could-
Particularly since anything to do with global commitment flows through
Right.
there anyway, that would deal
Right.
with going directly to the department.
So that would be
So we-
the
Agency of Human
To the
Services.
agency of human services.
Make
to make that change.
And then, we'll rely on Stephanie and her new role to make it happen.
That's it, I'm not in this.
You're the gift that keeps on giving. I think Medicaid and global commitment is gonna haunt her for the rest of her career. Yeah, as we talked about, that 3 million out of just pure general fund. Now, of course, we still have, I think, money out there from many years ago, when we set aside money for this workforce issue, back when we had a very large tobacco settlement, and I was much younger at that point. It's been a long time. And so.
So was I now.
So this is what you're offering for,
Yes.
For additional language around the 3 million.
Yes.
Doesn't change the funding.
That's
It just
right.
opens the, door to, make 3 million 7.
Yes.
But do we need to add a little bit more money to make the 7, to match the 7 million?
As I understand it, we don't. I'm looking to Sarah behind you. 3 million can make 7 million. We don't need to add more.
Yeah,
we
we almost get there.
Okay.
And depending on the timing of when the plan is approved, there'll potentially be a different match rate, so.
Okay.
All right, so, obviously, this has to go through that process to, it takes a little longer, but the delay seems to be worth
Yes.
the return. And then,
And I believe there is some dollars that are still out there.
yes, that's my understanding, they haven't all gone out. And there's also money in BSAC as well for mental health scholarships. So there's money in a variety of places in the interim.
This is a place that when we return next year, that I'm hoping that we get an update on what's happening with that. It's very positive. That is our,
That's the
that's
package.
the package.
Well, I think then we closed out all the one time at 7.
So there was one piece of workforce or economic development language
Yeah.
that the Senate probably wanted to offer related to the
Do I have
community revitalization.
Yeah,
And
do we have that language? And, I'm not gonna ask, I would ask you that you talk to Representative Marcotte. This is to, address and give a little bit more flexibility. Remember last year there was 10 million and I believe it was S11. And then we put in 30 million more, for a total of 40. And what this does is give a little bit flexibility, to, particularly communities where they might, be experiencing, a very significant need. So I would just not ask you to respond to it right now. And you can have conversations with Representative Marcotte.
As the time keeps ticking down, I'm pretty sure we'll get to the point, well, that'll be necessary.
And
but-
the other issue that came up that was workforce related was the bill on apprenticeship. It was very, very lengthy, and it didn't meet crossover in the House. I did have some correspondence with Representative Marcotte. He said it had passed, and the reason they were thinking about flunking, I think it was like 30 or 40 pages.
52 pages.
Oh, 52
Yes.
pages?
It was growing as the day went on. I thought it was a paragraph or two when I,
And
and
so, that bill has been passed by the House. Our Senate Rules Committee was gonna release it today, and Senate Economic Development was simply gonna concur.
Great.
So I said that would be preferable to get the suspension of the rules, and so I asked the pro tem if he would
can move
take
that.
care of that today, and he agreed. So, I just wanna let you know that we, I think, have a path forward on that, but to add 52 pages to the budget, seemed to be, not the best vehicle. So,
I'm gonna check that one off.
so check that
our
off,
to-do.
yeah. And then we were having conversations about the community violence prevention program, and that was the 5 million. We agreed on the money, I believe. It was just some of the language, and I think,
It's under consideration. I think what I've, and correct me if I'm wrong, my latest is that, did we hear from Senator Sears that they
Yes.
are still in negotiations with S4? So will hang on to this until
But
we decide what they
but I-
wanna do.
But I told him that the buzzer is off tomorrow morning, no later than that. I think on the whole, it's just would be some small, maybe modifications.
Okay, so that's still in
It's in
consideration.
play, yeah.
It's still that,
And Senator Sears is not here today, he's gonna be tuning in remotely. So
okay,
I just wanted to let you know that we're working on that as well as the basic ed in language.
okay.
And I think that might be it.
Now,
And one other area that I know is important to you, and we don't need to make a decision right now, but that has to do with what we do for a recovery housing.
yes.
And you had one time, our feedback, and I talked with Gary DeCarolis over the weekend, he's saying one time is not gonna really help them. They have staff that really, they need to do wage increases. So I have information about the number of staff involved, and he said base money is really what they need, and because you can't give a salary increase on one time and take it back. And so, based on the information that I was given, is that they have a total of 9.5 FTEs or 10 FTEs if they count IT support. So, we need to look at what we have available for base money, but I think we all recognize the role that the recovery housing plays. It's all part of housing. And so I would ask, rather than attempting to do something on the one time, if we have the base money. They said it would be much better. They would take a much smaller sum
Okay.
would help them. So we could look at what that might look like. But I just wanted to, if you want this information,
Information is always helpful.
I just thought I would share that with you. And I know Teresa's been looking at that. Thank you. So I don't think there's a disagreement of the desire to do
We
something.
just gotta figure out how much and where.
Yeah, so that's the information I got over the weekend in terms of staff, because I had no idea how much staff, are we talking about 20, are we talking about 5? And $1 million just for staff increases was kind of a lot for 10 people, so whatever. So, but,
Okay, so we'll take a look.
so if you would, we'll just take a look and see, but I would recommend a smaller amount, but we look to base and see how we might address it.
Yeah.
So that was hot off.
Yep, okay.
Yeah. So I thought that might be helpful in looking at making sure around wages. Thank you. That's, I think, anything else?
Perfect timing.
Oh, no,
I
we're
just-
getting dinged.
So just my logistic pieces is that I think we're gonna, today and tomorrow, when would you like to, do we wanna play it after floor, you on floor? I don't know how long your floor is gonna be.
We're probably until noon, at
Okay.
least.
And then,
And then
see,
I've
and then you've got a bottle bill?
Well, hope, I guess.
Yeah.
So, all right, and then we
You
have
go on the
floor
floor
at
at
1, and I just need to go for a couple of things, and then we've gotta move a bill out of our committee.
So why don't we, you give me what works for you, 2:30?
Let's shoot for 2:30.
Okay, all right.
Like, I'm rather book that and need to have to,
Then we can move it if we have to,
Right,
depending on how things evolve.
and then
Right.
who's making dinner? Was,
I think it's takeout.
I think it's takeout?
Uh-huh.
I'll get that grandson on that.
So, I know he's probably called up in order.
Yeah.
Is he watching? So, you know?
No, he's in school, thank goodness.
Uh,
Or maybe they brought it in the classroom.
All right.